Welcome to another edition of Access Higher Ed. I'm your host, Christina Wynn, Dean of Enrollment Management at Berkshire Community College. And today we're going to be talking about education that goes actually beyond just the associate's degree programs that Berkshire Community College offers. So I'm joined by two guests who have lots of experience in the areas of social work, and specifically with four-year and beyond degrees. So I'm going to allow them to just take a few minutes and introduce themselves. And we'll start here with you, John.
Hi, thanks, Christine. My name is John Schnauber. I'm an adjunct professor at Elms College, their BSW program here at BCC. I also work in the community with Pittsfield Community Connection, and I'm currently also working with the Maureen Center as a co-responder with the police department. Social work's great. It's amazing work. I have such a passion for it.
John, it sounds like you're a really busy guy. Before the show, we were talking, and you said that you've gone back to school.
Yes.
So the question might be, when do you sleep?
Just at night for a few hours.
Got it. Good. Well, welcome. We're glad to have you. Maureen.
Hi, I'm Maureen Holland. I'm the director of the social work program at Elms College, which the main campus is in Chicopee, Massachusetts. And we have a bachelor's degree in social work that has been in existence for actually over 60 years.
Wow. And how long have you been a social worker?
I am sort of the classic social worker that got a bachelor's degree in social work and then continued on for a master's degree in social work and began social work education. So I have been in the field for over 30 years, actually. Wow. So
great. So you're really experienced.
I'm really experienced.
We were talking before the show about social work and when students sometimes decide, perhaps right out of high school, that that's a field that they, for whatever reason, want to study. And there's some misnomers, right? They come in and they think, I might be somebody who's, when I'm a social worker, my job is to take children away. But social work is really more than that, right?
It's a lot more than that. Social work is really in every part of America at this point, especially the way that you're seeing our communities turn over and change, the way that they do things, the policies and laws that we see. The concept of social work and how we see the world, our frame, really comes into play in the way the world is kind of evolving right now. So even if you take business, total capitalist business, put a social worker in there. We are systems theory experts. That's what we're taught in graduate school,
and
systems
what does that
theory.
Mean?
We look at systems, whatever they may be, specifically with people, communities, families, the micro, meso, macro components of our communities and our world. We're taught to look at those systems and how they function and work together and between each other, and how one thing will play off another, and how our world works. So we can go into a business, say, and we can look at that system, the employees and the people and the clients or patients or whatever it is going on, and we can look at that system and tell how to do it better, because that's what we do.
Cool, great.
So yes, I agree. I think that social work, a lot of times if you watch television or really in just common conversation, you hear a lot about child welfare, which certainly is a very important part of social work, and actually my beginning training came out of child welfare. I think something that most people don't understand is the intent of child welfare is to preserve the family unit. So it's not just working for the state, which is a worthy thing to do, and protect children, but it's also the community work that goes with it, some of the work that John does. I've done a lot of work with maternal child health, so working with women while they're expecting babies or when they have young children at home or teen parents, helping them to keep their family moving in a positive direction so that it doesn't evolve into a child welfare situation. But also, social work often is in what we call host environments. So for example, if you go to the hospital, chances are you're going to have a doctor and a nurse and dietary people work with you, but you're most probably also going to have a social worker working with you. So that could be at the point of making decisions, end-of-life decisions, for example, or questions about adoption of children. It could be an issue of detox, of rehab, of being discharged into medical rehab if you've had a hip replacement, if you're an elderly person with dementia. One of the things we say about social work is it can really start at pregnancy or in that NICU unit, and at every life stage you could very well be involved with a social worker. So it goes all the way from pregnancy to intensive care in the neonatal unit to adoption, all the way to old age and end of life decisions. So we're often in host environments, like for example, to be in a hospital or to be in a nursing home, to be in a school. A lot of students are interested in school social work. Generally, those are adjustment counselors. But the training is generally social work.
Right.
Another thing a lot of students don't know is that in Massachusetts, and you get different numbers, but approximately 85% of therapists, so people who do counseling, are actually social workers. So a lot of times students are interested in related fields, and once they figure out that, yes, I do want to do that direct practice, I'm interested in counseling, the best route for me may, in fact, be a social work route.
Right.
So
what you're describing, Maureen, are some really heavy conversations and decisions. I mean, you mentioned end of life, going into schools, you know, neonatal. Those are things that are really intense for families. And as a social worker coming into that situation, how do you assess whether or not you're the right fit for that kind of work? How do you know?
I would say one of the things that we've noticed with students like from Berkshire Community College who have associate's degrees, many of the students have associate's degrees in human services or related fields, and may be working in the field or may have done internships and really have encountered social workers and have a pretty good idea. I think you're right with the high school students. It's another story because they know what they've seen on television. Right. And sometimes people will start off, we try to give them introduction to social work as early as possible when they're really just starting, so they can understand that these are heavy topics. And to really discern with us, is this the right path? Sometimes it might not exactly be social work. It could be a related field that they're interested in. So it's really that decision making and working with the student. The most important thing is for the student to be in a good situation and to be following the path that really they're destined to do. And I'm sure John has some thoughts about that.
Yeah. The path to social work for me was very organic. I didn't start there by any means.
Right.
What was your intended path?
Law enforcement.
Okay.
I grew up in a family of law enforcement. My grandfather was a sheriff, my father the same, 50 some years between the two of them. Wow. I came out of high school, went right into the Air Force, security forces, law enforcement, military police, and the Army. But then when I got back finally to the real world, after serving in the military, the real world, I was going to UMass, and I kind of found social work there while helping fellow veterans. I had no idea I would get into social work. For me, early on in life, it was far too liberal and hippie-ish, if you will.
Yeah.
But I found that it really helps people. It helps the community. It builds community. We're taught in social work school, graduate school, that we're agents of change. That's what we do. We're here to change things for the impoverished, for the less fortunate, for those that just need a voice. So when I found that out, like, that just grabbed my heart. And I haven't stopped since, and that was in 2005. You know, I got my bachelor's in sociology and followed that up with an MSW at Springfield College. And I just keep sharing this passion and sharing it. And like Maureen was saying, this work goes everywhere. Yeah. Everywhere. My passion started in law enforcement, and I've come almost full circle. My graduate work now into my doctoral degree is smart decarceration. It's looking at changing the criminal justice system so that we aren't overpopulating our prison systems, and we aren't using resources that could be better used in other places. So it's really amazing work. It's just so amazing.
So if you're just tuning in to Access Higher Ed, I'm here with Maureen and with John, and we're talking about how you might want to consider taking a deeper look into social work and the opportunities to educate yourself in those fields. So turning the attention from, you recognize that you have the passion. So maybe you've gone an associate's degree or you've worked in the field to some capacity. What happens next? What is part of the academic training that goes into someone getting a bachelor's degree and then an MSW and moving forward in their career?
I would say in the bachelor's level, so if someone has an associate's degree or is coming right out of high school, that social work training really looks at the person in the environment. So similar to what Jonathan was saying is that it really combines psychology, sociology, often criminal justice now, and we have a heavy presence in jails, again, back to our host communities. Often we're probation officers, that sort of thing. So looking at that person and what is going on with them, maybe what changes need to be made to that person to make them happier, to make them move through life easier. But also at the same time looking at the environment. What is going on in the environment that is making life difficult for people? So we look at things like decarceration. What is the criminal justice system looking like? What sorts of changes or upgrades should we be making to that system? The mental health system. What changes need to be made? Right now I'm teaching social work practice with communities, and students, including our students in our site at BCC, they hop in their car, they drive around, they talk to elected officials. They look at what is going well in the community and then what changes might need to be made. Students sometimes go to the State House to advocate on behalf of our clients to look at systems change. So as far as social work goes, our training really is on two sides of the house. So students learn psychology, they learn mental health, they learn substance abuse. At the same time, they're studying, you had mentioned previously in a conversation, policy, the history of policy, going back to the Elizabethan Poor Laws. Up until now, what are the federal, the state, the local policies that exist? They study communities, they study organizations. Right now I'm teaching students about how you can start organizations or work with organizations to get nonprofit status, how to work in public institutions. So it's really getting students trained to look at the person in the environment and to look at how we can work with individuals and families and how we can work with the broader system. And I think that's the signature of social work, that we're trained in systems theory and we're trained to solve problems. So the theory is that with the bachelor's degree, that upon graduation, you can work in any system because you're trained in problem solving. So students will do things like work in child welfare, or they'll work with Jonathan doing one-on-one work with teenagers. Or we've had students work with mayors placed in elected officials' office. A number of years ago, we had a student who actually worked with Hillary Clinton when she was a senator doing constituent advocacy. So it can be sort of all levels of work when you're trying to change either big systems or small systems in learning to solve problems. So that's the training that you really get at the bachelor's level. One thing I might add is that in Massachusetts, students who have a bachelor's degree in social work can sit for a license. So they, without anything else, just by virtue of successfully graduating from a bachelor's degree program. So they can sit for a license in Massachusetts, become a licensed social worker, which in Massachusetts actually opens a lot of doors. I would say that's not true in all states, but it is true here, and it makes it a very solid professional degree.
Right. Wow, it sounds like the field of social work really touches every industry that you can think of in one way or another. So you mentioned, putting people in situations where they're making these heavy choices along with family members, and also on the academic side. So you're preparing students in the classroom. Can you talk a little bit about the experiential learning that a student who is in your program is coming from BCC to go to the Elms? Can you talk a little bit about what those kinds of hands-on experiences might look like?
So I can give you sort of the big picture, and then I'd ask Jonathan to fill in with, because he is working directly with some of those students. So the Elms is accredited by the Council on Social Work Education, which means that we are sort of overseen by this accrediting body that allows us to confer the degree. and allows students to go into graduate school on a fast track. But that's something we can talk about a little bit later. But as part of our accreditation, students are required to do at least a 400-hour internship. Wow. So it's very significant. One of the things that I think is really good about Elms College, and I'm really committed to never changing it, is that our students basically, when they're in the field, are basically in a classroom of 5 people. So they have one professor who only worries about 5 people. Okay. So, you know, sometimes if you're taking a class, you might be, we have small classes, but there might be 15 people. The way we have it set up is, for example, Jonathan, he might be teaching policy and have 15 students, and that's one class. But if he's doing field, his one class is these 5 students, and he goes out into the community to work with them. So in social work education, we consider that the most important part of our education. And it's not, okay, go do an internship, let me know what's going on. Yeah. There's a big syllabus and lots of work that goes along with it that the agency helps you with, and then your faculty member helps you with. So it's very, very closely supervised. So I'll turn it to John, because he can give us an idea of the on-the-ground stuff.
Yeah. Like we were talking before, I have 5 students right now from the Elms class. They're in their senior year of their bachelor's program. They have like 4 weeks left right now. They spent a year in the field so far doing their 400 hours. And the 400 hours is just for the bachelor's level. When you go higher in the education, it goes up to 1,000 hours, I believe, of supervision. The ones that we have in the field, they're placed all over our city and in our community right now. We have some placed at DCF, some at the hospital, private agencies. The Brain Center has interns. They could be at any agency in our community. And they're really out there working and doing the work as if they were full-time employees. They make decisions with the guidance of myself and their supervisors. Not only do they have myself helping them through the process, but they also have supervisors in the field at the agency supervision. So there's a lot of eyes on us, rather the students, while they're coming through this process. They have to journal, submit journal entries every week to me. There's papers. We sit down and meet once in the beginning of the process and once at the end of the process. All of us sit down and go through the experience, what was learned, how it was processed, if there's any questions. Concerns that the student may have. There's 9 competencies that a bachelor's level, all of us as social workers, but there's 9 competencies in social work that we all have to meet in order to get our degrees. The supervision and oversight of a bachelor's, even a master's level in social work is amazingly huge. There's a lot of oversight. There's a lot of signing off. There's a lot of making sure the competencies are met. As Maureen was saying, we're all licensed professionals with the state of Mass. Once we get our degrees, we have that opportunity to do that. We guide our students through the process. If they have hardships in the field, we're there for them. We talk them through it. I was mentioning before that I had a student that actually lost a client this year. It was heartbreaking. She called me up crying. She was not prepared for this as a bachelor's level social worker at all. So we talked about it. We processed it. Her fellow students and peers came in. We all gathered together and processed it together, and how this is a real world situation for social work. We help the ill. We help the impoverished. We help people that are in the last moments of their lives. People die, and that's a reality for social work as a profession.
So it really goes back to, you know, when you say 400 hours or 1,000 hours, in my mind that seems like an awful lot of time, but when you just made that example, there is no preparation that can, really fully prepare you for the times where you're meeting death and hadn't expected it. So it's really great to know that there are these pieces in place so that people can feel like they're being as well prepared as they possibly can for those difficult situations.
I think one of the things that brings to mind too is, I think when I started in social work education as a student, this concept of self-care, I had never heard of it at all. Now it's really integrated into social work and to other professions as well. But I know in social work, it's not like, oh, isn't it nice to take care of yourself? it's required. And some of the things Jonathan's talking about is how, if a student has a traumatic experience in the field, we don't say, good luck, tough it out. We have a whole response.
Shake it off.
Shake it off, shake it off. So in social work, this idea of self-care, and the way that I try to tell the students is, a surgeon has a scalpel, and he has that scalpel, it must be sharp. And we are the instrument. So we are the instrument of change. So if we're not sharp, then we're not going to do a good job with our clients. So it's not a luxury, it's a necessity. So students really need to understand how to monitor themselves and how they're doing. I often say to students, if you've been in counseling before, make sure that you know that that's a helpful thing and that you should return to it or keep it in your back pocket as something that you can always turn back towards. Or maybe it's a time to start thinking about it again, especially at that student level, because like you said, all of a sudden you're faced with some pretty heavy realities of life. But if you're in good shape, you can find it fascinating and interesting, and really one of the terms we use is plan change. So you'll see someone who's in a difficult situation, you plan with them, and it's really exciting when things get better. So for you to be in that good shape to be able to help that person with that plan change, it's very important. So the thought of just being in difficult situations is part of it, but the other part is we really work to support our students and also to train them, because it can be very heavy.
Right.
I want to point out with BCC, it's such a beautiful campus. I'm an alum, my associate's degree there. I actually will take time out in my social work policy class to make my students get up, walk outside, and look down the valley.
It is beautiful.
It is.
And I make them stand there and do it and breathe with me because, and they think it's funny. They think it's hilarious when I first do it. They're like, why are you doing this?
Right.
But it's a lesson in self-care.
Right.
You have to stop and you have to look at that beauty in our world. Social work will beat you down.
If you don't take care of yourself,
Yes.
how are you going to be equipped to take care of all these other people with these challenging situations?
And then it's just exciting, like going into, say, a long-term care facility or working with a family who has difficulties with their children. If you can go in with this strength-based, positive approach, things get better much more quickly. If you go in like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Nothing's going to get better. So we really, in social work, and particularly at the Elms, we train students in strength-based social work. So the idea is, okay, you come into this very difficult situation, you can throw your hands up and say, oh, forget it, this is never going to work. Or do you start saying, okay, this family's having a hard time, but guess what? At least they have an apartment. Like, the roof exists. This isn't always true. The children are here. They're not in foster care. The parents are working part-time. Like, I can build on that. So training yourself to finding out what's going right, then you can build on it. If you go in and say, oh, this apartment is horrible. I can't believe she doesn't have a full-time job. These kids are a mess. Where are you going to go from there?
Right.
So it's a discipline of mind, I think, and that's how you really can move forward with people.
Yeah, it's a challenge to get yourself in that kind of mindset, but a real strength if you have the ability to do it.
It is.
With just a couple of minutes left, I want to make sure that folks at home who are hearing about social work and thinking, this might be something that I'm interested in, and I think not only would I like to go to Berkshire Community College and start a degree there, but like, what is the pathway, and particularly for folks who maybe are already working, like what are the flexible options that maybe are available to them?
I could comment on that. So, the Elms College is in Chicopee. It's a traditional 4-year school. Students can come in right out of high school, do 4 years with lots of majors. They can also come in with an associate's degree. They can come in part-time. There are lots of different ways to work within our 4-year system. We've always had students that come from Berkshire County to the main campus and do somewhere between 2 and 4 years with us, depending, and that's wonderful. What we have now, and I know we've sort of alluded to this, is for a number of years now, we actually hop in our cars and leave Chicopee, drive down the highway, and go not too far away, a little over an hour away, to the Berkshire Community College campus. So we move ourselves instead of moving the students. And the good news and the bad news is what we like to say is everything's the same. So we bring the syllabi, the books, the instructors to the Berkshire Community College campus. So it's not social work light, it is everything's the same, and we're like really committed to that. What's different is that the students usually come, they've got all of their gen eds out of the way. Sometimes they have a few loose ends to tie up, and we can work with that. But they come primarily, especially in the junior year, on Saturdays.
Okay.
And they do their social work classes. Again, everything's the same books, same assignments and everything, but on Saturdays instead of during the week. The second year, their senior year, they continue to come on Saturdays at a little bit later schedule because 12 credits actually are in the field. So they're spending their time in agencies and doing their internships. Right. So I would say that the model is that we can come to you. We can come to you on Saturdays. You can go to Berkshire Community College. There's a little Elms office there.
Yep.
You can call. We have great relationships with BCC, especially the Human Services Department. I know Professor Dupuis is someone who we work with very intimately. So that's a little bit. I'll pass it to John because he's boots on the ground.
Just a couple seconds left, John.
All right. It's a great program. It is intensive. You're not going to be missing anything. It's weekends, as Maureen said. The classes are great. We're small classes. We're very personal. If you're coming to, find an experience and change the world, come to Elms.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all for tuning in to another edition of Access Higher Ed. Maureen, John from the Elms, was a real pleasure. We'll hope to see you again soon. Thank you so much for watching.